What would you do if a stranger knelt before your child and began to pray? Marcus Donovan had power, money, and influence, but he completely lost control when a poor boy did exactly that with his 9-year-old daughter. This is the story of the miracle of the Virgin Mary that began in the most unexpected way. But before we continue, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I would love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. Marcus Donovan owned a network of real estate development companies. A man used to crowded boardrooms, multi-million-dollar contracts, and decisions that changed destinies in minutes. Elegant in his expensive suits, firm in his voice, he was admired and feared at the same time. For the city, he was the portrait of success. For himself, he was someone who believed he could solve anything with money, contacts, or the right specialist. At least it had always been that way until life showed him there were pains he could not control. He lived in a 3-story mansion in one of the most prestigious areas of Denver. Imported vehicles in the garage, employees taking care of every detail of the property. A life that represented a dream fulfilled. But of all his possessions, nothing made him prouder than his only daughter. Emma was only 9 years old, but she performed gymnastics as if she were a veteran. Graceful, fearless, she was her father's pride in competitive meets. Since she was little, she had shown a natural talent that impressed even the most experienced coaches. On weekends, Marcus would take her to state competitions where she always shone among the top placements in her category. She doesn't perform routines, people at the training center used to say. She flies through them. The walls of the house were decorated with trophies, gold medals, and photographs of Emma in her victories. It was the only thing in Marcus's life that made him feel genuine pride, disconnected from money or business. Seeing that little girl master movements 3 times beyond her years with grace and determination was something that touched his soul. Emma was his world. Everything he had built, the entire empire he had raised, had one greater purpose: to give his daughter the best opportunities, the best future, a life without limitations. Until one single second changed everything. During a routine training session on a Tuesday afternoon, the apparatus shifted unexpectedly. Maybe a loose bolt, maybe an alignment issue. Emma fell. The impact was brutal. Marcus was watching from the observation deck when it happened. He saw his daughter tumble through the air and hit the mat with a sound he would never be able to forget. He ran to her faster than he had ever run in his life, shouting her name, his hands trembling as he held her. The doctors tried everything. Marcus hired the best specialists in the country, spent fortunes on experimental treatments, consulted neurologists in other states, but the verdict was cruel and definitive. She would never walk again. Since then, her life had been reduced to physical therapy. 3 times a week, the routine repeated itself like a burden. In the early morning, Marcus pushed a wheelchair through the cold corridors of the Rehabilitation Institute. The sound of footsteps echoed on the polished floor, mingling with the smell of antiseptic and the murmur of other patients. It was one of the most expensive and renowned rehabilitation centers. But even so, for Marcus, that place represented his greatest defeat. For Emma, each session was a battle. The therapist encouraged her, counted to 3, asked for more strength, and she obeyed, sweating, fighting against a body that would not respond. Exercises that seemed simple became insurmountable mountains. When she finally returned to the chair, she was pale, exhausted, with tears hidden in her eyes. Marcus watched everything in silence, his hands clenched, the knuckles white. The man who closed multi-million-dollar deals with a single phrase could not move a single inch of his daughter's legs. With each failed attempt, he felt as if he were the one being crushed. At home, the atmosphere was no longer the same. The equipment that used to fill the training room now stood still, gathering dust in the corners. Emma spent long periods in the wheelchair, trying to pass the time with drawings or books, but for most of the day, she limited herself to staring out the window. The easy smile that once lit up the house had become rare. Marcus tried to start conversations, invented stories about when she would compete again, but the girl only replied with a nod or a weary look. And so the days went by. The big house, once full of life, had turned into a heavy place, sustained only by the hope that stubbornly refused to die. It was a Tuesday like any other when everything changed. That morning, Marcus took Emma to yet another physical therapy session. For him, it would be just another of those same days. Exercises, sweat, hidden tears, and a silent ride home. But it was not. The Rehabilitation Institute was busier than usual. Emma had just finished the movements guided by the therapist. She was exhausted, her arms hanging on the sides of the chair. She breathed with difficulty, trying to catch her breath. The therapist was writing something on a clipboard, preparing for the next stage of the exercises. That was when it happened. At the end of the hallway, a boy appeared. 8 years old, clothes far too simple for such an elegant place, worn-out sneakers, hair messy, as if he had just rolled out of bed. He walked without hurry in silence, his eyes fixed on the girl in the wheelchair. Marcus noticed the boy immediately. Who was that child? What was he doing there alone? The questions began forming in his mind, but before he could fully process them, something extraordinary happened. The boy stopped right in front of Emma, and there, before everyone, he knelt down. Bringing his small hands together, the boy closed his eyes and began to pray. His words were low, almost whispered, but in the stillness of the hallway, everyone could hear fragments. Virgin Mary, help her. Make her well. Silence filled the place. Nurses stopped what they were doing. Patients in the hallway looked at each other. Even the therapist froze, not knowing how to react. It was such an unexpected scene, so pure and yet so out of place in that clinical environment. Emma blinked a few times, surprised. No one had ever done that for her, much less a stranger. She remained quiet, only watching with a mix of embarrassment and curiosity. There was something in the sincerity of that child that touched her in a way she could not explain. Marcus, however, did not see faith in that gesture. He saw an affront. There was his daughter, fragile, tired, after fighting against a body that no longer obeyed. And suddenly, a poor boy who had nothing to do with their lives knelt before her, as if he had the right to interfere in that pain, as if his prayers could accomplish what millions of dollars in treatments had failed to do. Blood rushed to his head. The man who always kept composed lost control. What do you think you were doing? Marcus's voice echoed in the hallway, harsh, filled with fury. The boy slowly opened his eyes, but did not get up. He swallowed hard, unable to answer. His small eyes filled with tears, but he held his position. Get up now. Marcus took a step forward, his face red with indignation. How dare you kneel before my daughter? Who gave you permission? Emma tried to intervene, her voice weak. Daddy, please. But Marcus did not listen to her. The weight of anger, pain, and helplessness exploded in that instant. Where are your parents? He continued, his voice growing louder and louder. What is a child like you doing alone in a place like this? It was then that a woman came running down the hallway, blue uniform, a face marked by exhaustion, hands calloused from so much work. She saw the scene and rushed toward the boy. What are you doing? She pulled the boy by the arm, forcing him to stand up. I am sorry, sir. He did not mean to bother anyone. The woman's name was Maria Reyes. She had been working as a custodian in that Rehabilitation Institute for 3 years. That day, her son's school had canceled classes because of a maintenance problem, and she had no one to leave him with. She brought Carlos along, asking him to stay quiet in a storage room in the back while she worked. But Carlos saw that girl in the wheelchair, and something in his child's heart moved him to do what he thought was right. Get this boy out of here, Marcus said to Maria, still furious. And do not let him come near my daughter again. Maria held Carlos tightly, whispering apologies as she dragged him away. The boy looked back one last time, his eyes meeting Emma's for a brief moment. Marcus was still trembling with anger when the therapist approached. Donovan, perhaps it is best if we finish for today. Emma has already done enough exercise. He nodded, still processing what had just happened. He took Emma's wheelchair and pushed her toward the exit, the silence weighing heavily between them. All the way home, neither father nor daughter said a word. But Emma could not stop thinking about the boy, about the sincerity of his prayer, about the way he had not hesitated to kneel before her, even though he was a complete stranger. Almost a month after the encounter at the Rehabilitation Institute, during a home physical therapy session, something changed. Emma was doing the usual exercises when she suddenly stopped. "Wait," she said to the therapist. "I felt something." Marcus lifted his eyes from the tablet he was reviewing. "What did you feel?" "It was like a twinge in my thigh." The therapist ran some simple tests. Nothing conclusive. It could be phantom sensation, something common in cases like Emma's. In the following weeks, the sensations repeated, small tingles, points of sensitivity that appeared and disappeared. Marcus scheduled an appointment with Dr. Patterson. The test showed minimal neural activity, almost imperceptible. "It is interesting," the doctor said. "There is some activity that was not there before, but let us keep monitoring it." In the days that followed, the sensations intensified very slowly. Emma began to feel when her legs were touched, first faintly, then with more clarity. It could just be he began but stopped. He did not want to give false hope, neither to her nor to himself. It could be what? "Nothing, dear. Let's see how you are tomorrow." But Marcus could hardly sleep that night. He stayed awake thinking about what had happened at the Rehabilitation Institute, about the boy's prayer to the Virgin Mary, about the sensations Emma had described. Was it just coincidence? It had to be. The next morning, Emma woke up excited. "They're still there, Daddy," she said during breakfast. "And today they are stronger." Marcus ran a few more simple tests. He pinched her leg gently. Emma screamed, "It hurt, Daddy." It really hurt. He immediately called Emma's neurologist, Dr. Patterson, and scheduled an emergency appointment for that afternoon. At the office, Dr. Patterson ran a battery of tests, reflex checks, electrical stimulation, imaging scans, everything he could to try to understand what was happening. "This is interesting," he said, analyzing the results. "There is neural activity that did not exist in the previous tests. Small but measurable. What does that mean?" Marcus asked. "Honestly, I do not know. In cases like Emma's, neurological improvements are extremely rare, and when they do occur, they are usually gradual over the course of years." This year, he shook his head. "This is far too sudden to fit into any pattern I know. But can she get better? Could she walk again? We will monitor closely. For now, it is important not to build expectations that are too high. These could be only temporary signs." The following months were of slow but steady progress. First, Emma managed to move the toes on her right foot slightly. Then, she began to gain some control over the thigh muscles. Patterson observed with caution. "This is real progress, but still very limited," he explained. "We do not know how far it may go." Marcus hired the best physical therapists, daily sessions, specialized equipment, everything possible to take advantage of any improvement that appeared. After 6 months, Emma was able to stand with support for a few minutes. Her muscles atrophied from the time in the chair, needed to be gradually strengthened. "This is exceptional progress," Dr. Patterson admitted. "In cases like this, any recovery at all is extraordinary." Marcus could not get out of his head the image of the boy kneeling and praying to the Virgin Mary. The coincidence of dates bothered him. The improvements had begun exactly after that prayer. On a Friday morning, Marcus made a decision he had never imagined he would make. He went back to the Rehabilitation Institute, not to take Emma to physical therapy, but to find answers. He parked the vehicle and walked through the familiar hallways. He searched for the woman in the blue uniform, the boy's mother. It was not hard to find her. Maria was cleaning the floor on the second level. The same uniform, the same weariness on her face. "Excuse me," Marcus approached, his voice gentler than it had been that day. Maria turned, recognized him immediately, and recoiled. "Donovan, my son will not bother you anymore." "No," Marcus interrupted her. "I need to talk to you and to your son." Maria looked at him with surprise and apprehension. "Did he do something wrong?" "No, actually, I think he might have." Marcus stopped, the words sounding absurd even to him. "I need to talk to you both. It is about my daughter." Maria hesitated. That rich and powerful man had shouted at her son, humiliated her in front of everyone. "Why would I want to talk now?" "I finish work at 5, she said cautiously. "I can wait for you, or I can go to your house if you prefer." "No, here's fine." There is a coffee shop on the corner. At 5:30 in the afternoon, Marcus was sitting at a worn-out table in a coffee shop that probably cost less than the wine he drank at dinner. Maria arrived with Carlos, the boy hiding behind his mother. "Please sit down," Marcus said, gesturing to the chairs. "I want to apologize," Marcus began, the words hard to get out, "for what I said that day, for the way I treated you." Maria blinked, surprised. I'm going through a difficult moment with my daughter, but that does not excuse my behavior." Carlos finally lifted his eyes, curious. "How is she?" the boy asked, his voice soft, but filled with genuine concern. "She is better. Much better." Marcus took a deep breath. "In fact, that is why I am here. The improvements began right after what you did." Maria frowned. "What he did?" "The prayer. She began to feel her legs a month after your prayer." Silence stretched across the table. Maria looked at Carlos, who shrugged as if it were obvious. "I asked the Virgin Mary to help her," Carlos said simply. "She looked so sad." "Son," Maria whispered, touching the boy's arm, "you cannot just go around praying for people without permission." "But it worked," Carlos replied, looking at Marcus. "Did it not work?" Marcus remained silent for a long moment. How could he explain to an 8-year-old child that he, a rational grown man, was there precisely because he believed that, yes, it had worked? "Tell me about yourself," he said to Carlos. "Do you always pray for people?" Carlos nodded. "At church when someone is sick, at home when mom is tired. Aunt Elena taught me that we should pray for one another." "And do you believe that your prayers are heard?" Marcus asked the boy. Carlos shrugged. "Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But Aunt Elena says we should always try because we never know when the Virgin Mary might help." Marcus found himself in a surreal situation, a millionaire real estate developer asking an 8-year-old child for explanations about faith. Can I take you to meet Emma?" he asked. "She would like to thank you." Maria hesitated. "Donovan, we are simple people. Your daughter must be used to—" "Please," Marcus interrupted her. "Emma asks about him every day. She wants to meet the boy who prayed for her." Those are her words. Carlos brightened. "She wants to meet me, even after you yelled at me." Guilt hit Marcus like a punch. "Especially because of that, I was wrong. Completely wrong." In the end, Maria agreed. The following Saturday, she would take Carlos to visit Emma. Marcus left the coffee shop with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. That boy had touched something greater than he could understand. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to open his mind to possibilities his logic had always rejected. Saturday dawned sunny. Marcus had spent the entire morning nervous, rearranging the house, instructing the staff, preparing everything for Maria and Carlos's visit. Emma was in the wheelchair in the living room, more cheerful than she had been in months. Her legs still did not respond completely, but she could feel when someone touched them. Remarkable progress. "Is he really coming, Daddy? The boy who prayed for me?" "Yes, he is, and I want to be kind to him. He is a special child. What should I say to him?" "Whatever comes from your heart. Dear, just be yourself." Marcus was genuinely nervous. He had spent years controlling every aspect of his life, but that situation was completely new to him. More than anything, how was he supposed to deal with his own confused emotions about what was happening with Emma? When Maria and Carlos arrived, Carlos looked around with wide eyes, full of childlike curiosity. Marcus went to the door to greet them personally, dismissing the staff. "Maria, Carlos," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." Carlos shook his hand with surprising firmness for an 8-year-old child. "Thank you for inviting us, Mr. Donovan." Maria murmured polite greetings, still clearly uncomfortable with all that opulence around her. "Emma," Marcus said softly, leading the visitors to the living room. "These are Maria and Carlos." Emma smiled from the wheelchair, reaching out her hand to Carlos. "Hi," she said. "Thank you for praying for me." Carlos blushed, but shook her hand. "How are you? Have your legs gotten better?" "A little," Emma answered honestly. "I still cannot walk, but I can feel them sometimes now, and that is so much more than I had before." Carlos nodded, as if he had expected exactly that. "My Aunt Elena says some things take more time, but that we should never give up." "Your Aunt Elena must be very wise," Emma said, smiling. "She is. She always says that God has his own timing and that sometimes good things come slowly so that we can learn from them. Over the next 2 hours, something extraordinary happened. An unlikely friendship formed between two children from completely different worlds. Emma showed Carlos her drawings, her books, her gymnastics trophies. Carlos told stories about school, about church, about the aunt who took care of him. She remained in the wheelchair throughout the entire visit, but there was a lightness in her that Marcus had not seen in months. It was as if the presence of that boy brought back a little of the child she had been before the accident. Carlos showed no pity or discomfort in front of the wheelchair. To him, Emma was simply a new friend who happened not to be able to walk. He treated her condition with the naturalness that only children possess. Maria and Marcus talked on the porch. She told him about her life, about the difficulties of raising a child alone, about the faith that sustained her in the hardest moments. Marcus spoke about his fears, about how helpless he felt in the face of Emma's paralysis, about how he had begun to question his certainties about the world. You know, Maria said, Carlos has always been special. Since he was little, he seemed to see things others do not. Pain, sadness, need, and he always wants to help. I judged you, Marcus admitted. I judged you unfairly. Very unfairly. Everybody judges, Maria replied gently. What matters is learning from mistakes. When the time came for Maria and Carlos to leave, Emma did not want to say goodbye. Will you come back? She asked, holding Carlos's hand. If your father lets us, Maria answered, looking at Marcus. Of course, Marcus said immediately. In fact, I would like you to come whenever you want. Carlos, you can come here to play with Emma anytime you wish. Carlos's face lit up. Really? Can I come next Saturday? Yes, you can. And Maria, if you need anything at all, call me. Here is my card with my personal number. Maria took the card, still unable to believe in the complete change of that man. Carlos hugged Emma. Keep praying, he whispered in her ear. The Virgin Mary is listening. After Maria and Carlos left, Marcus found Emma still in the living room looking out the window. What did you think of him, sweetheart? He is different, Daddy. Different from everyone I know. What do you mean? He does not pity me. He just cares. Really cares. Marcus sat down beside his daughter. The months that followed brought changes for everyone involved. Carlos began visiting Emma every Saturday, always accompanied by Maria. The two children developed a genuine and deep friendship. Emma continued to progress slowly. Each month, she managed to feel a little more, to move a little more. The doctors remained perplexed. Marcus watched everything with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. His daughter was getting better. That was undeniable. But more than that, she was happy again. Carlos's presence in their lives had brought a light he did not know how to explain. One Saturday, about 6 months after Carlos's first visit, something extraordinary happened. Emma was in the garden with Carlos when she suddenly stood up from the wheelchair. Carlos, look, she shouted, taking 3 shaky steps before needing to lean on a tree. Carlos clapped his hands, excited. You did it. You walked. Marcus ran toward them, his heart racing. Emma, how did you? I just felt like I could try and I did it. It was not many steps, and she had to return to the chair soon after exhausted. But they were real steps, functional steps, impossible according to every medical prognosis. Dr. Patterson examined Emma the following week with an expression of complete bewilderment. This should not be possible, he said quietly. The damage to her spinal cord was severe. For her to regain this level of function, it defies everything we understand about neurological recovery. Marcus sat in the examination room, holding Emma's hand. So what are you saying, doctor? I am saying that your daughter is experiencing something I cannot explain with medical science. Whether you call it a miracle or an anomaly, the result is the same. She is healing in ways that should not be happening. That evening, Marcus stood in his study, looking at the small business card Maria had given him months ago. On the back, she had written a simple prayer to the Virgin Mary. He had never been a religious man. Success and wealth had been his gods. But looking at his daughter walking across the living room with assistance, he could not deny what his rational mind had tried so hard to dismiss. Something greater than medicine, greater than money, greater than his understanding, had touched his daughter's life. And it had come through the humble prayer of a poor boy who had nothing to offer but faith. Marcus established a scholarship fund that covered Carlos's education and that of other underprivileged children in the region. But more importantly, he had learned something that no business school had ever taught him. That true power is not found in bank accounts or boardrooms. It is found in the simple, pure faith of a child who believes the Virgin Mary listens. And sometimes she answers. "Daddy," Emma said one Sunday afternoon while practicing walking in the garden. I do not know if it was Carlos's prayer, if it was the doctor's, if it was my own determination, or if it was all of it together, but I know that none of this would have happened if that boy had not had the courage to kneel and pray to the Virgin Mary for me. Marcus knelt beside his daughter, watching her stand with less support each day. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson of this entire story. Sometimes when we lose control of everything, we discover that there are forces in the world that go beyond our understanding. And sometimes those forces manifest themselves through the simplest people in the humblest gestures. This is the story of what happened when a poor boy knelt before a rich girl, and how an act of pure faith changed 3 lives forever. A reminder that miracles exist even when they do not come wrapped in the way we expect. Carlos continued visiting every Saturday. The friendship between him and Emma grew stronger with each passing week. Maria and Marcus had also developed a genuine friendship, 2 parents from different worlds united by the miracle they had witnessed. Emma's progress continued. Within a year, she was walking independently, though still building strength. Her doctors documented her case as one of the most remarkable recoveries in medical history, though they could never explain how it happened. Carlos never took credit for the miracle. Whenever someone asked him about it, he would simply smile and say, "I just asked the Virgin Mary to help. She did all the work." Marcus's life changed in ways that went far beyond his daughter's healing. The arrogant businessman who had once believed money could solve anything became a humble man who understood that the most valuable things in life cannot be purchased. He became a regular attendee at the small church Maria and Carlos attended, sitting quietly in the back pew, learning about the faith that had saved his daughter. The scholarship fund he established grew to help hundreds of children. But every year on the anniversary of Carlos's prayer, Marcus would visit the Rehabilitation Institute and leave flowers at the spot where a poor boy had knelt before his daughter. A reminder to himself and to anyone who might see that sometimes the greatest miracles come from the most unexpected places, delivered through the purest hearts by the grace of the Virgin Mary. Now I would like to invite you to a brief prayer. O most holy Virgin Mary, pure and full of grace, shining star in the midst of darkness, a safe refuge for the children who weep, a living hope for those who walk weary. Today before you, we surrender our hearts with their pains and their joys, with their struggles and their hopes. You who were chosen to bring the Savior into the world, look upon us with your eyes of mercy and cover us with your mantle of love. Beloved Mother, welcome families, protect children, console the sick, strengthen those who suffer, lift up those who have fallen into sin, and guide those who are lost on the path. Do not let us drift away from Jesus, but teach us to follow him with faithfulness, even in moments of the cross and of silence. Oh, sweet Mary, teach us to keep the word of God in our hearts, just as you treasured every mystery of your Son's life. Make us humble in victory, patient in suffering, and persevering in faith until our final breath. Mother of the Church, intercede for us before the throne of the Most High. May your maternal presence accompany us every day. May your intercession defend us from temptations. And may your tenderness allow us to experience the peace that comes only from God. And when the day of our final encounter with the Lord arrives, may it be your hand that leads us to Jesus, so that we may eternally contemplate the glorious face of your Son. And now I want to hear from you. Do you believe that the miracles of the Virgin Mary still happen today? Write your answer in the comments, or even share your testimony of faith. Your comment may console and strengthen someone who needs hope. This is the story of what happened when a poor boy knelt before a rich girl in a wheelchair, and how the Virgin Mary answered a simple prayer. A story that reminds us that faith knows no boundaries, that miracles happen through humble vessels, and that sometimes the greatest power in the universe responds to the smallest voice. May the Virgin Mary bless you and keep you in her tender care. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories about the miracles of the Virgin Mary.